Hi, I'm Renita Washburn, a PhD student in the University of Central Florida's Modeling and Simulation program. Today I will present results from a study on bottom-up psychosocial interventions for interdependent privacy and their effectiveness based on individual and content differences. In particular, I'll explain how the project tested the effectiveness of 3 types of interventions in changing broader social norms about interdependent privacy and social media. We'll start with an overview of the research and method to include the intervention design and mixed analytical approach. Then move to results of quantitative and qualitative analyses and end with the discussion of the implication of the findings. First, what is interdependent privacy violation? From here on out, I'll call it IDP. IDP violations occur when people share sensitive information about others without their consent. Multimedia IDP violations are a common type that involves social media users sharing other people's photos or images online, which may include private information about others. On social media, photos can reach unintended audiences and migrate across platforms as they're shared and reshared, such that the person depicted no longer has control over their online image. Photos can also undergo context collapse as they are modified or taken out of context with accompanying text captions, such as with memes. IDP violations can have a variety of personal and professional consequences, ranging from psychological distress, harassment, job loss, stalking, and damaged interpersonal relationships. Given the consequences of IDP violations, a great deal of research has examined nudges and educational interventions to help users protect their own information online. Little research has focused on psychosocial interventions for IDP preservation. Psychosocial interventions have the advantage of targeting change from the bottom up, influencing change at the source, the social media users. Bottom-up interventions empower communities to shift social norms and values based on new shared beliefs. The research on psychosocial interventions for protecting one's own privacy has shown video interventions are effective for promoting positive social behavior and internet usage and are easy to disseminate to large audiences. However, the success of video interventions is ultimately driven by their content and the context in which the interventions are applied. This framed our research questions. We investigated the extent to which video interventions were effective in altering IDP-relevant photo sharing attitudes and behaviors compared to a controlled condition. The overarching research question was how psychosocial interventions can promote IDP preservation in social media. We developed 4 sub-questions focused on how attitudes and sharing behaviors change based on photo content, individual ratings of IDP seriousness, and intervention type. For the study method, we compared 4 groups of participants: control, who did not receive an intervention; the concepts group, who learned about the concept of IDP violations, or as we termed it in the videos, privacy pirating; facts group, who were provided fabricated statistics about the prevalence and consequences of IDP violations, however received a debrief on the reason for the deception; and the narratives groups, who were shown 2 stories about people negatively affected by IDP violations. Our main participant task started with all participants being asked to rate how likely they were to share 68 photo-based memes. Participants responded using a scale from extremely unlikely to extremely likely to share. A social media usage questionnaire included 7 survey items developed to assess the participants' social media photo sharing activity and their number of social media accounts. An intervention response questionnaire measured participants' ratings of the intervention quality, knowledge, and perceptions about interpersonal privacy prevalence. And there was also a general demographics questionnaire. For results, we'll begin with the first research question. To what extent do users' IDP-relevant photo sharing attitudes change in response to the interventions? First, the interventions were perceived as relatively equivalent in effectiveness. Yet, the narrative intervention resulted in significantly higher ratings of IDP being common compared to facts or concepts. Given the 3 video intervention types were rated relatively similar in effectiveness by participants, additional analysis were used to test if there was a net positive effect of the interventions. Participants reported significant increases in knowledge about IDP and agreed that the topic of IDP violations is important and needs more awareness. To answer research question 2, we investigated the degree to which participants' decisions to share photos of other people in social media differed based on the intervention condition. Intervention condition, however, was a non-significant predictor of the sharing likelihood. However, the aim of the interventions were not necessarily to decrease all types of sharing equally. Instead, it was considered potentially more feasible to decrease sharing of photos that have the most potential to cause harm. Thus, we examined intervention effectiveness in light of the context differences, specifically valence, so positive or negative portrayal of the photo subject. Meme valence had a significant main effect on sharing likelihood, such that more positively valenced memes were more likely to be shared. Controlling for valence resulted in a marginally significant main effective condition, where the concept and facts conditions resulted in a decrease of sharing likelihood. Also, the likelihood of sharing was lower when photo targets were portrayed more negatively. Next, we studied the interaction between condition and self-reported IDP seriousness. The findings indicated that the narrative condition backfired to increase the desire to share among those who did not believe IDP violations are a serious problem. In addition to the primary research question, we engaged in an exploratory analysis of themes found and participant feedback on ways to improve the learning experience. Overall, all 3 interventions were well received by participants. Highlights from the participant feedback on intervention effectiveness were related to including more relatable stories and examples of desirable user behavior, adjusting the audio and visual quality, and expanding the training to include personal strategies for IDP violation prevention. Let's also have a quick discussion of the findings and their implications. The concept intervention was most effective in reducing the sharing of more negative images. An explanation for this is that narrative stories and the facts presented were too mild to compel changes in sharing behavior. Additionally, our results suggest that social media users are receptive to general information about IDP and responsive in changing some of their sharing behaviors. Furthermore, that there are cases in which mere awareness of concept is an important first step in bottom-up social change. Notably, the interventions did not alter users' ratings of IDP seriousness, nor did interventions alter participants' ratings regarding the need for more IDP precautions. One explanation is these particular privacy preferences are not easily changed. For example, a person may not believe that social media needs additional precautions to reduce IDP violations, but still not share content based on contextual factors such as valence. For this reason, a reduction in sharing may not be accompanied by a change in overall IDP attitudes. Another key finding on interdependent privacy attitudes was the narrative condition being associated with an increase in beliefs that IDP violations are common and occur frequently. This may be a consequence of the narratives being based on mild and ordinary scenarios, which felt familiar to the participants. Participant feedback on ways to enhance the intervention's effectiveness underlines strong preferences for real-world stories as a part of IDP interventions. Even in the narrative conditions, participants noted that they wanted to hear more stories or even stories in the first person versus third. An explanation for the participants' affinity for stories is found with the narrative transportation theory. It's the idea that narratives are a powerful source of social influence that engage the audience so that they transport into the narrative's world. And while transported, narratives can be used to persuade behaviors and change attitudes. The goal of these bottom-up psychosocial interventions was to take a first step toward changing social norms about IDP through awareness, and without relying on technical interventions that will require buy-in from social media platforms. We observed individual and content differences influence effectiveness. However, we have identified strategies that can overcome these individual differences to change attitudes and behaviors about IDP to preserve privacy. Thank you for viewing this video. Please check out the full conference paper for more details on the study findings to include a more in-depth discussion of finding implications and on future research.